interesting video on Wild Rifts. They're back with a patch notes 2.2b review. So now, a lot of interesting stuff about these patch notes. So firstly, this patch notes is really buggy, really glitchy. You guys will see later. I have taken a glance through and I did realize a couple of problems with the patch notes already. Such as it's showing the wrong event, it's showing the Stargazer event, and so on. We'll get to that later, but the patch notes was actually leaked on a Turkish or Spanish version of this website, so it was in that language, but it was leaked out a couple of hours earlier than intended. So most people, including myself, have already actually seen the patch notes before they officially released the English version. And when they did, unfortunately my area was having some construction, so I couldn't record until now because the construction has stopped. So we're gonna get into that. So first up, we have two new champions, Rengar and Kha'Zix, which will be released on May 6th on an event which we'll cover later. But it's two new jungle assassins. Not good news for AD carry mains like me, but we're gonna move on from that. So we have new skins. Most notable are the two God King skins, which are pretty popular on the PC version. So here we have new accessories. So here, basically, we have Wolf Knight and Celestial Lion, which comes from the God King line. It's gonna be baubles, and then we have a lot of other stuff, I guess you could say, which it's all related to the event, and I'm gonna show you guys what it is later on during the event. So here, take note that these two will only be released if Kha'Zix or Rengar wins the event. So here we're actually gonna just talk about the event. So basically, essentially, it's a Masters of the Hunt event. So what I'm expecting about this event is that you're gonna probably be choosing a team, either Team Kha'Zix or Team Rengar. Whichever one you choose, you will get the respective icon. So I do expect this this event to be relatively mirrored to the Darius Draven event, where you will get an icon for your first reward. Somewhere in between, you will get a champion selection chest between previously it was between Darius and Draven. Now it'll be between Kha'Zix and Rengar, and somewhere else in between, you probably at the end of the event you'll get like the bauble, like the baubles, or baubles might also be paid. I'm not too sure about that. And then at the end, you're probably gonna get the icon border, and then after the entire event, whichever team wins gets the upgraded icon. So what does it look like? I've done a Google to sort of find it. So these are the these are what the icons will look like. So this is the Price Stalker and Void Reaver, which is the base level icon. And if Rengar wins, he gets the one with the additional yellow effects on the border, and same for Kha'Zix with the Apex Predator one. So here we can already see, this is probably some leaks, but we have a some kind of bundle here, and we have probably another leak, which is the champion selection chest, as I predicted. These are what the baubles look like. So if they do give out the baubles during the event, I assume that if you pick Kha'Zix, you will get Rengar's bauble, and vice versa, because it makes sense that if you are Kha'Zix, you kill Rengar, so you see the trophy collection bauble, and if you are Rengar, you kill Kha'Zix and you see the Voidwing bauble. That's what I believe. And we also have, here is the icon, the border, I should say. This is probably the highest level reward for the event. I'm expecting the event to probably have 7 levels, much like the Darius Draven event, but we shall see. So here we have a new system, which is the Nemesis Dual system. So basically, a Nemesis Dual will trigger when these criteria are met. So both, in this case, it's for Kha'Zix and Rengar. So for the event to trigger, both have to be above level 13. Neither have taken or dealt champion damage within 5 seconds. Both are alive, and they're at least 16 units apart. And this will trigger the Nemesis Dual. So basically, yeah, it won't happen every game because these conditions may not always be met. And to win the duel, you have to deal damage to the opposing champion, and the opposing champion must die within 3 seconds of taking the damage from you. So basically, it doesn't have to be a kill, it can be an assist, as long as it's within 3 seconds of them dying. So here, if Rengar wins, he gets Ferocity during his ultimate. So that's basically a buff to his ultimate, where he gains his Ferocity, which is the bar below his health because he doesn't really use mana, so his ferocity is used to enhance his abilities. Think of it something like how Pantheon enhances his abilities, but instead of it being stacks, it's like a bar instead. So here we have if Kha'Zix wins, he gains an extra evolution point. So Kha'Zix normally gains 3 evolution points, so he can evolve 3 out of the 4 of his abilities. But if you kill Rengar in the Nemesis Dual, you can evolve all 4. So I'm not sure how I feel about this event. We're gonna have to look and see how much it really affects the game. But my initial thoughts is that this is a pretty interesting event that ties in the lore of Kha'Zix versus Rengar into the game, which is something that I do like. However, it feels like this event might just be a bait, especially for lower skilled or players to sort of feed the other enemies. So, for example, if you're Kha'Zix versus Rengar and the event triggers, and maybe your team's Kha'Zix is just gonna be chasing the Rengar around the map, trying to scout the whole map and find out where Rengar is instead of doing the correct decision. Let's say your team has a Kha'Zix. And this is another example, by the way. So your team has a Kha'Zix and Rengar is ganking bot lane. So now there's like 3 let's say you see 4 people bot lane, but your Kha'Zix is in top lane with you, and the dragon is at top lane. So let's say instead of going for the dragon, which you guys should clearly do since there is no opposition, since they're all at the bottom lane, instead the Kha'Zix runs all the way from top lane to bottom lane to try to win the Nemesis Dual against Rengar. Now this is what I'm afraid of, but we'll see if that really happens. I think it's pretty likely, especially in lower elo, but we shall see. So for champion changes, we have a nerf to Darius health, base health and health regen. By of course Riot's favorite number 40 health regen, 40 base health nerf, and 2 base health regen nerf. So this is Darius has been getting a couple of buffs here and there, like his ultimate being unstoppable, his healing on his Q increase for the last couple of patches. So this should take him down a peg. He is a pretty often seen, pretty highly picked, I should say, Baron slash top laner. So this should affect him, but not by too much, I believe. So now Draven has his Q spinning X damage decrease. So now basically this, for me, this is almost equivalent to having a like base damage decrease, because basically if you're a good Draven, you always have your spinning axis active. So it's reduced by 10 for every level. Now this will of course make a difference, not too much difference though, I believe, but of course it will hurt Draven slightly. Personally, I don't really think that this nerf was needed, because I don't really feel that Draven needed the nerf. I mean, Draven is a really snowball kind of champion, so you do need to get ahead in the early game, and people who play Draven are generally one tricks, or people who predominantly play Draven, like Draven is their main champion, so rarely is Draven people's secondary or backup champion, so I don't really think it affects too much people. It's good for people playing against Draven, but I think that this will hurt Draven slightly. And next we have an Evelynn nerf. So I think that this nerf is actually pretty major. So they increase her ult cooldown by 20 seconds at the first rank, 15 seconds at second rank, and 10 seconds at max rank. So now this, on the surface, doesn't seem to be too bad, because her actual damage, or her actual numbers and her skills are not really affected. However, her ultimate is her main so-called main ganking tool, I guess you could say, because normally you want to have your ultimate up. Generally, when you play Evelynn, you farm jungle. When your ultimate is up, the moment you hit level 5, you gank, use your ultimate, execute somebody, go back to farming, your ultimate comes up, get off another gank, and use your ultimate, execute someone, go back to farming. That's Evelynn's general play pattern. Of course, you will capitalize on stuff that's happening even if you don't have your ultimate on, or off cooldown, I should say. However, this 20-second nerf will affect her ganks and possibly delay her power spikes, because she gets kills less often with the nerf, and could actually affect her snowball potential, because she gets she will get a overall lower frequency of kills in the early game. So this nerf might actually affect Evelynn pretty negatively, but we shall see. And Galio, this one's really interesting. So Basically, we get a 10 HP buff on his base stats. Not Rat's favorite number 40 for the first time, I should say, at least in recent history. So they reverted his passive as well. So this is a buff, this is a buff. They reverted his AP ratio nerf on his Q, back to 2 from 1.5. But here is the so-called nerf. The nerf is actually a bug fix. Fix an issue where Galio's Winds of War was dealing its initial damage twice. So now I'm sure everybody here, myself and you all included, have all realized that when Galio's winds converge into the circle, it deals a ton of damage, and that is the majority of his damage in from his skill 1. Like, even if you stand in the circle, you're not even going to take as much damage as the initial hit. So it turns out that the initial hit shouldn't have been doing so much damage. It was actually a bug which caused the damage to be dealt double. So, not the best look on Riot, because they took really long to fix this bug as well, and probably majority of us, myself included of course, did not notice that this bug existed. So this will really hurt mid lane AP Galio and further possibly push him into the support role. However, we'll of course we'll see what happens, and I am definitely planning to make a tier list on patch 2.2 because there's been a lot of massive changes since my last sorry, did I say patch list? I meant tier list. I'm planning to make a tier list for this patch because since my last tier list on 2.2, there have been a lot of changes, especially accumulated from 2.2a and now 2.2b. So we're gonna have a tier list come out sooner or later, when we sort of see how the changes in the 2 layers patch affect the meta. So next we have Katarina. So for Katarina, they did nerf her passive damage by 10 at all levels, and this is basically the spin she does when she collects her dagger, which is of course hitting her actual damage numbers. Then we have a nerf to the Shinpo range. So now personally, Katarina, in my opinion, is really broken at the moment, because even for people who don't fully understand how to play Katarina, who is a very high skill cap champion, they don't fully understand how to play Katarina, but if they get a couple of kills and in the early game they snowball, and at the late game they may not have the best mechanical ability, but they just mash their E and get the resets just because of the situation. And Katarina just really hard to counterplay against her when her numbers are so broken. But this should actually help out the problem a little bit. But I don't really think it'll affect her too badly, but it is a step in the correct direction. Now, personally, what do I think about the E range nerf? I don't really like it. Now, I do believe Katarina is pretty broken, but I don't think that this is the way to nerf her. I think they should hit her numbers, her damage numbers more directly. No use hitting something like her cooldown, because she's gonna get the cooldown off resets anyway. So I think they should actually lower her damage on maybe her Q or her ultimate. But I think that the passive damage is the majority of the damage. The passive damage and the E damage is the majority of her damage. So maybe they should give a bigger nerf to the passive damage and maybe a nerf to the Shinpo damage instead. But I don't really like range nerfs. Like, I feel that range nerfs are pretty unfair to the people who main the champion, because sometimes you don't really have to press ability to see the range. You just know it off muscle memories from playing the champion for so long. So I don't really like range nerfs like the Lee Sin Q range nerf, and Xin Zhao did also get a range nerf before, and Blitzcrank got the whiff nerf, which is not as bad as the range nerf, but I really don't like range nerfs or range changes for that matter. So I don't really like this too much, but I think it's good that Katarina did get nerfed. Speaking of ranges, they did give a range buff to Leona, which I of course don't like as well, because for the same reasons as above, although this time it's a buff. So Leona getting buffs again. So I did mention last time that she needed a base defense buff. However, instead they gave her a base health regen buff, which will also be helpful, especially against poke lanes like Ezreal or Enchanter versus Enchanters, which like to poke. So this will help. Passive damage increasing by 8 at all ranks. Basically increases her burst / her allies burst by a little bit. Of course, that's good. E range increase. Now, you guys know how I feel about range changes, but I did feel that I felt that the problem with Leona is sort of that the indicator of her E makes it look like you're gonna hit, but in reality you don't. So I think that indicator might be bugged or might need a change, but yeah, not for the range itself. So for Teemo, we have a bug fix on his Guerrilla Warfare, which is his invisibility. Camouflage duration per rank now correctly displays instead of this. So basically, it's a tooltip change. It's not an actual gameplay change. So Ziggs, of course, being a very dominant mid laner at the moment with his tower taking potential, his poke, and his just late game scaling damage. Ziggs is really potent at the moment. So basically, they just increase the cooldown of his Q, which I think is a good nerf, a good nerf because after this, if Ziggs is still really dominant, they can give him further nerfs. But I don't believe Ziggs has ever gotten nerfed. I think he's gotten a buff to his ultimate size, but I don't think that he has gotten a nerf before, if I remember correctly. But the 1.5 second increase at the first rank, and the 1 second increase second rank, half a second increase in the third rank, and the max rank remains unchanged. So this basically is aimed at his laning phase. It affects his laning phase poke and his laning phase wave clear, which I think will get him under control a little bit. So I do like the change. So next we have the AD carry changes. Ashe cooldown on her volley decreases quite significantly. You do max your W first on Ashe, so this is helpful. But at max rank, it's just actually at all ranks, it's a 1 second change. Honestly, I don't think it's really going to affect much. Her volley cooldown definitely wasn't the problem for Ashe. Now Tristana is getting another buff, so they buffed her W a couple of patches ago. I think like 3 patches ago. I think it was like 2.1A or 2.1B. I think they did buff. They did buff Tristana's W. Last patch they buffed her AD scaling, and they also buffed her E cooldown, which I did mention that wasn't the problem with Tristana because that is a buff to her scaling. It does not buff her early game at all. So the problem with Tristana is not her scaling, but her early game. So now in this patch, they actually did buff her early game. So her E, which you max first, the damage on her E is increasing by 5 at the first level, 10, and then 15. Yeah, 15 and 20 at max rank. So basically, her early game is going to be really improved because you take E, W, Q, and then E again, and then R, and then E, E. So basically, you're going to be maxing your E at level 7. So level 7, you might still be in laning phase, but regardless, basically, even if you got like, let's say 2 to 3 points in it, it's going to be doing a lot more damage than what it did. So it's going to be doing a lot more damage than what it did. So basically, this is actually an early game buff, similar to the ultimate 50 damage increase on her ultimate on all ranks. So that actually does improve her early game damage as well. So now, we're going to have to take a very close look at this, but this could actually make Tristana meta. Minimally, it would put her up 1 or 2 tiers. She wouldn't be unplayable, definitely. I would predict she is at least going to be viable, but whether she is meta or not is a different story. Now, same story with Varus. Now, I feel like this is these changes to AD carries are pretty good, with the exception of Ashe. Ashe, not too good, but the AD carry meta is pretty healthy at the moment. Of course, we do have Kaisa and Xayah and Ezreal dominating the meta, but in reality, even picks like Vayne to some extent in certain comps are still viable. And now that they're making Varus and Tristana viable as well, Draven has always been viable. Jhin has always been viable in certain comps as well. So basically, we're getting to a very healthy state where every AD carry is more or less viable, which is of course what we want to see. So Varus, the change is a base mana increase. Of course, that's helpful being a predominantly spell-based AD carry. So here is the major change. His his E. What am I talking about? His W, which is the blighted quiver with the stacks that stack up to 3 times on your enemy. It's actually increasing its percentage health damage. So at level 1, it's increasing. This 6.5 to 9.75 is based on how many of the stacks you have on. So it's increasing to 13% from 9.7% over here at level 1, at rank 1. So that is a 3.25% increase, which is pretty decent, I would say. And at max rank, we're going to just take a look at this, 20.25, we're going to have 27% instead. Now that's a 6.5% health increase. Now that is a lot, especially since it's not flat damage, it's percentage health, so it shreds tanks a lot better. And even versus squishier targets here, of course, are doing more damage, so this is essentially a huge damage buff to his W. Now, who knows, this could make him meta, or maybe we could see like a rise of AP Varus, because AP Varus, of course, maxes W and relies on proccing his W stacks, so we might even see AP Varus, who knows. So that's a really good change to Varus. Now, Vayne did get another buff, so a 10 bonus AD on each rank of her ultimate, and a cooldown buff of 10, 5 seconds, 10 then 5 seconds. Basically, it's a early game buff. Probably not enough to put Vayne in the meta, but might make her more viable than she already is. She is still somewhat viable, especially versus tanky enemy team compositions, but this buff definitely will not be the buff that puts her over the edge or makes her really good. Of course, they have been slowly buffing her up, but we shall see. So now Xayah, I have no idea what's the justification for this. Xayah's cooldown is still quite long apparently, with lack of AD and haste options. Okay, so Xayah, who is in my opinion already the top AD carry, has gotten a buff. Her mana cost on her W has decreased. I'm sorry. So now I have already recorded a Xayah commentary guide, which I will be releasing soon, and I'm about to record a Xayah complete guide really soon. And personally, playing a lot of Xayah, I can tell you guys that mana is not an issue. So this basically is little to no change, because unlike people like Misfortune, Xayah does not actually use that much mana, so this change doesn't really matter too much in my opinion, because you never actually run out of mana unless you stay in lane for a really, really prolonged period of time without recalling, which rarely ever happens. So I don't think this change really matters. The cooldown though decreased by 1 second at all levels, so now this is great. Of course, you max her W seconds, so this is useful. 1 second cooldown increase is not major, but is welcome, of course. Now this is probably the most major change on her E. So when her feathers return to her, she does root if 3 or more hit an enemy. So now her root duration changes from 1 to 1.25. So now this is a pretty massive change. In my opinion, the increase in CC duration always will be a big thing. So this is a pretty big nerf to Xayah, who in my opinion was already the best AD carry, now even better. So we have changes to Aren't Sensor and Harmonic Echo. So the justification is that they want to normalize the cost of support items. So Aren't Sensor is getting the same treatment as the Oblivion Orb, the Guardian Angel, and the Blade of the Rune King. Basically, cost increased by 200 for the combined cost. So the components still stay the same. Now this is the other glitchy part, because I was trying to figure out what was the change to Harmonic Echo so that I could explain it to you guys, but I realized that the change is the base damage and the base damage HP ratio. So now, if you guys notice, Harmonic Echo doesn't actually give any damage, and it does not scale with HP. It is for healing and shielding, so it does not scale with HP at all. So this is I have no idea what this is, but I assume that this is a typo error on the part of Riot. Probably will get like an updated one or a fixed change log on the Harmonic Echo, but for now we don't really know what's the change. But assuming that they want to normalize the cost, it might be a cost increase like the Iron Sensor, but we shall see about that. Conqueror did get a nerf, which is a 8 second to 6 second decrease on how long you can stack. Now, when you talk about nerfing runes, a lot of people take Conqueror. Conqueror probably the most common rune, because if you can't take any other rune, like if you don't take any of the tank runes, you don't take electrocute, basically like more than half of the champions will take Conqueror. Like I would say 60% of champions take Conqueror, because there are no better options. There are very limited rune choices in Wild Rift, so they just take Conqueror out of necessity. So I don't think that the nerf really affects it too much, because everybody will be affected by the nerf unless you're of course playing Conqueror versus Electrocute. But I don't think the nerf is a really big thing, and I don't feel that there's even a need to nerf Conqueror, because everyone is on level ground. If Conqueror is so-called stronger, everybody will have the stronger Conqueror. If Conqueror is weaker, everybody has the weaker Conqueror, so it doesn't really matter. Now it's come to the point that even mages like Ziggs and Orianna take Conqueror instead of Electrocute, just because it it's just better essentially. So conqueror is pretty much just the best rune in the game for people who can take it. Now barrier, 30-second cooldown increase is major. Now, of course, the bot lane meta for the longest time was AD carry taking barrier and the support taking heal. Now, barrier has also been really commonly seen in the mid lane on mages like Orianna or Ziggs, and in the top lane, you even see sometimes. Sometimes I even take barrier if I'm forced to play top lane. So barrier basically is a really good spell for what it does, and basically they're just nerfing the cooldown so that people will be discouraged from taking it too much. I think it's a good nerf. I think barrier was pretty overpowered when you really think about it. At least they didn't actually decrease like the actual amount of shield you get or whatnot. But this will allow you to use it less frequently. You'll have it up less often. So I'm predicting that the bot lane meta is going to go back to heal on AD carry and support taking exhaust or ignite. But we'll see about that. So now we have changes to dragons. So now changes to infernal and cloud dragon. So now according to Riot, a post by Riot on Twitter, the highest win rate dragon is cloud followed by infernal. So these are the two highest win rate dragons. So now they're trying to sort of balance the dragons to sort of make it such that every dragon is as equal as possible in terms of how important it is. So if your team is deciding whether we should contest the dragon or not, it should just be, should we contest dragon, not should we contest infernal dragon, or should we contest mountain dragon, is what they're going for, I believe. So they did nerf the damage from infernal dragon by 2%, and if it's elder by 3% instead, and the stack for the dragons is going down to 3% from 4%. So if you have multiple dragons, this is actually could be a 2 to 3% nerf overall. So yeah, so for Cloud Dragon, movement speed going down from 7.5 to 6, and basically same for the Elder, 11.25 to 9, and the stack going down by 0.75 per stack. So I think that the Infernal is generally agreed by the player base to be the best dragon, so this nerf does take it down a peg. Cloud Dragon, honestly, it's agreed by the player base to be the worst dragon, but it seems to have the highest win rate for some reason. So overall, I don't think this will affect the dragons and how people play around dragons too much, because at the end of the day, the buffs are the same. Like, Infernal Dragon is still a damage buff, just that it is a less of a damage buff, but it still is a damage buff, so I don't think this will affect too much, but we'll of course see how it goes in the meta. So with that out of the way, that is everything. So thanks for watching the video, guys, and see you guys in the next